have attained to higher grades, especially those above the abyss, hardly return to this vision, or it implies a certain innocence, a certain defect of understanding, which is not possible to be master of the temple. Again, the grades are exempt, and major edit are too energetic to admit of the balanced quietude of this state. Only in the center of the tree of life, only in the self-poised security of the solar axis, can we expect to find a steady indifference to event, which is the basis of the trance, and that generous radiance, which tinges it with rose and gold. This trance differs notably from most others in a way which the above stated conditions would lead us to expect. It is psychologically a state, as opposed to an action or an event. True trances of semantic intensity are in a sense timeless, but it may be said that most of them are marked by well-defined issues of a critical character, that is, the entry to each is quasi-spasmodic. In this case, however, laughter, the common defect of all mystical systems previous to that of the Eon whose law is Thalamar, is that there has been no place for laughter. But the sadness of the mournful mother and the melancholy of the dying man are swept into the limbo of the past by the confident smile of the immortal child. And there is no vision more critical in the career of the adept of Horus than the universal joke. In this trance he accepts fully the formula of Osiris, and in the act transcends it. The spear of the centurion passes harmlessly through his heart, and the sword of the executioner strikes idly on his neck. He discovers that the tragedy of which so many centuries have made such cases but a farce for children's pleasure. Punch is knocked down, only to get up grinning with his gay "Rooty-toot-toot-tit! Here we are again!" Judy the Beetle. The hangman and the devil, merely the companions of his playtime. So sins after all, the facts which he thought tragic are real enough, and the essence of his solution is that they are not true as he thought of himself. They are just one set of phenomena, as interesting and as fatuously impotent to affect him as any other set. His personal grief is due to his passionate insistence on contemplating one insignificant congeries of events, as if it were the sole reality and importance in the infinite mass of manifestation. It is thus that the perception of the universal joke leads directly to the understanding of the idea of self as conterminous with universe, and at the same time one with it, creator of it, and aloof from it, which triune state is, as is well known, one of the most necessary stages of samadhi. It is the culmination of one of the two most important chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. There is a further merit in this matter. In the idea of laughter is inherent that of cruelty, as has been shown by many philosophers, and this is doubtless why it has been excluded by the mystic schools of pity mongers from the Dole curricula. The only answer is to shrug the shoulders in humorous contempt. For on this rock and no other have all the brave barks found one by one amid the nature is full of cruelty. Its highest point of joy and victory are marked by laughter. It is the true physiological explosion and relaxation of attention which produces it. Notably such drugs as cannabis indica and Anhalonium luini, when do actually loosen the girders of the soul which give her breathing. Cause immediate laughter is one of the most characteristic effects. Oh, the huge, wholesome contempt for the limiting self, which springs from the sense of gargantuan disproportion perceived in this laughter. Truly it slays with joyous cannibal revels its sour black-coated missionary, the serious ego, and prompts him into the party, the voice of civilization, the messenger of the white man's God. Bubble, bubble, bubble. Throw in another handful of sage, brother, and the sweet-smelling smoke rises and veils with exquisite shy seduction the shameless bodies of the stars. Beyond all this, for practical value, since the signpost at every turn of the path of the wise reads danger, yet springing directly from it by virtue of this very slaying of the ego, is the use of laughter as a safeguard of sanity. How easy for the charlatans of oratory to seduce the simple enthusiasm of the soul. What help have we unless we have the wit to know them as ridiculous? There is no limit to the abyss of idiocy wherein the quacks would plunge us. Our only saving reflex is the automatic joke of the sense of humor. Robert Browning was not far from the kingdom of God when he wrote, "Rejoice that man is hurled from change to change unceasingly. His soul's wings never furled, and there is after all but little salt in the sneer of juvenile satyr as cum dicit Horatius Elohe. For it is yet to be recorded that any man brought aid and comfort to his fellow by moping. No, the universal joke, though it be not a true trend, is most assuredly a means of grace, and often proves the chief ingredient of the universal solvent. Back then to Browning, to the brave last words he wrote while fourscore struck upon the timepiece of his years, "Greet the unseen with a chair." Bid him forward, breast and back as either should be. Strive and thrive. Cry, speed, fight on forever. There is here. Amen. With the world understood, ye would see it was good, dance to a delicate measure. Aye, let us end with that most sudden, surprising word of a certain angel of the vision and the voice, who left the seer, lapsed in his solemn trance with the gay, laughing phrase, "But I go dancing, tables of the law." Bah! Salvanto tabu irisu.
So off. I'm gonna put my food on someone else, and then she's saying now, no, it was real photos of someone else, and everyone's like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, what are you talking about? But Kate is still way too far. She shouldn't have posted that shit on TV. Like, that's stupid. Why would you do that? That's just unnecessary. Just, and she was mad because Britt told her she was going to shoot her with her gun. And I guess she had a gun in her car, is what was said.
We find no such diagnostic. Trends may be continued for weeks or months, and the most ardent devotee of Tao searching his magical record with the most conscientiousness, and cuteness, finds it impossible to indicate the onset of the vision. In fact, it may be surmised that the vision arises not from any given action, but rather from a subtle suspension of action. Conflict of events has ended happily in a state of serenely perfect balance, in which, though energy continues to manifest, its issues have become without significance. We may compare the condition with the return of health of a fever-stricken man. The alternation of pyrexia and subnormal temperatures has subsided. He forgets gradually to consult the thermometer at the accustomed intervals, becoming absorbed instinctively in his regular pursuits. At the same time, he is no longer aware of the hot and cold spells, but half consciously of the quiet glow of health. Similarly, in this vision, all conscious magical effort ceases, although the practices are continued with all customary diligence. And the whole of the adept's impressions, internal as external, are suffused with the glow of beauty and delight. The state is in many respects closely akin to that sought by the smoker of opium, but it is natural and requires no artificial regulation. It will appear from the foregoing that nothing could be more absurd than to attempt to give instructions for the attainment of this state. To aspire to it still worse, to seek to regain it after it has passed, must appear the climax of bad logic. Though delectable and blessed as it is, can one call it actually desirable? We need not assume that it is in any way deleterious, that it exhausts good karma, or that it wastes time and damns aspiration. It should be accepted when it occurs with calm indifference, enjoyed to the full and quitted without regret. Its occurrence is in any case evidence that the adept has reached a definite and rather exalted state of being, since he can live so many hours without being perturbed by the incidence of any motive force. It implies a marked degree of attainment of internal and external control. It proves the possibility. Welcome, Stephen. If you have something you want to say, raise your hand, Stephen. If not, I understand. laughter, the common defect of all mystical systems previous to that of the eon whose law is fathomable, is that there has been no place for laughter. The sadness of the mournful mother and the melancholy of the dying man are swept into the limbo of the past by the confident smile of the immortal child. And there is no vision more critical in the career of the adept of Horus than the universal joke. In this trance, he accepts fully the formula of Osiris, and in the act transcends it. The spirit of the Stephen, not Stephen. You were listening to Little Essays Towards Truth, Dover Press. This is Crowley. Centurion paces harmlessly through his heart, and the sword of the executioner strikes idly on his neck. He discovers that the tragedy of which so many centuries have made such cases but a farce for children's pleasure. Punch is knocked down, only to get up grinning with his gay "Rooty-toot-toot-tit." Here we are again. Judy, the beat. The hangman and the devil, merely the companions of his playtime. So since they threw the facts which he thought tragic are real enough, and the essence of his solution is that they are not true as he thought of himself. They are just one set of phenomena, as interesting and as fatuously impotent to affect him as any other set. His personal grief is due to his passionate insistence on contemplating one insignificant congeries of events, as if it were the sole reality and importance in the infinite mass of manifestation. It is thus that the perception of the universal joke leads directly to the understanding of the idea of self as conterminous with universe, and at the same time one with it, creator of it, and aloof from it, which triune state is, as is well known, one of the most necessary stages of sound. Indifference, the state of mind which is characterized by indifference, is commonly called trance, but the misnomer is unfortunate. It is, in fact, in a sense, the precise contrary of a trance. Trance usually implies samadhi, and this state specifically excludes any such occurrence. It implies a uniting, and this is a will disassociation. Yet there is nothing herein to suggest necessarily any practice of the Black Brothers, for it is not, properly speaking, an attainment, but rather a convenient attitude, and it is one of the very greatest practical importance and use. One cannot remain indefinitely in any samadhi. At the same time, it is proper to fill the intervals between gusts of positive work in such a way as to leave oneself as free as possible to take the next step. One should therefore cultivate a habit of mind which is not bound by any form of desire. The state of indifference is thus a form of that silence which is defense and protection. and is cognate with the third noble truth of Buddhism. Sorrow ceasing. The general idea of the state is that the mind should react automatically to each and every impression. It does not matter whether the event be yea or nay. Blavatsky observes that the feeling is at least tinged with disgust. Blech! But this is an error. Such a state is imperfect. There should, on the contrary, be a quite definite joy, not in the impression itself, but in being indifferent to it. This joy springs doubtless from the sense of power involved, but that is again an imperfection. One should rather rejoice in the cognizance of the ultimate truth that existence is pure joy, not in any feeling more immediate. It is to be observed that the attainment and maintenance of this state depends to a great extent on the mastery of several trances. For instance, one must be convinced of the first noble truth by the trance of sorrow, or it would not be logical to be indifferent to all things. There might be, in the absence of this perception of sabe, pi dukkam, some impression which actually led to some state free from sorrow, and this is not the case. Freedom from sorrow depends on freedom from impression. Yet it would not be fair to say that this state of indifference was akin to that dullness which succeeds the acute spasm of sorrow. It is not the anesthesia of a nerve worn out by excessive pain. There is never any place in the curriculum of a magician for passivity. Of course, we here accept what may be called the active or willed passivity described in Liber RXV. Indifference is to be an intensely active condition. One may compare it with the ease of a skilled fencer who meets and deflects every possible attack of his antagonist with equal vigor, unconscious of his acts because he has trained his eye, wrist, and even his blade to think for themselves. Thus, indifference is the spiritual form of the automatic consciousness. Of the adept, and this resides in Yesod, the place of the fortress on the frontier of the abyss, as described in Liber 418 in the 11th ether. This indifference, being a habit of normal mind, it is easier to attain than any true samadhic state. It involves less technical ability. This is particularly the case because, as noted above, the trance of sorrow has been an almost necessary preliminary to the proper understanding of what it implies. The method, therefore, of acquiring the word is to be preferred to attaining. Indifference is simple. It is, in effect, the way of the Tao. The following authorities may prove useful to the aspirant. Existence is only to be understood as a continuum. All parts of existence are therefore ultimately equivalent, each being equally necessary to complete the whole. Each event is thus to be received with equal honor, and the reaction to it made with equal indifference. To offer a practical parallel, suppose one is to receive £1,000, and this amount is paid over in divers coins with IOUs for various sums. Since one knows in advance that the balance in one's favor is £1,000, one does not get excited on the appearance of any particular item, goes on steadily counting, making the right reaction, whether a plus or a minus item is at issue, with perfect calm and accuracy. Each entry in the account may be different, but one's mental attitude is invariable. The common error of the unphilosophical mind is indeed due to ignorance of the true nature of the soul. One is apt to suppose that each event, as it occurs, may be good or bad, may indicate that one is winning or losing, but as soon as one is certain that the issue is facetious or factitious, that it has been determined beforehand, becomes absurd to be affected by one incident in the illusory process, which nature uses symbolically to express the fatality of truth rather than by any other. It is interesting to note that this method of acquiring indifference is quite independent of any experience of the trance of sorrow. It is a simple and normal consideration based on strictly thalamic premises. It is thus most highly to be recommended. The methods of the dead Aeon of Osiris were in fact attended with no inconsiderable danger. The question of separateness from the universe is critical for one thing for another. It is a mistake to be dependent on such a theory as that implied in the first noble truth in its outer aspects. It is altogether better to adopt the purely intellectual attitude and anchor it subsequently in neshama. By simply transcending the normal rational mind in the usual way by the method of contradiction or equating of opposites, such as is described in Conks Om Pex and in the best essays on the Holy Kabbalah. It is apt, moreover, to lead to several types of error to regard indifference as a state inferior to samadhi. In particular, one may tend to think of it as passive, as imperfect, as an interregnum, whereas it should be considered as a state of peace with victory. It need only be added in conclusion that indifference is not perfect until it has entered into full possession of at least one samadhic trait, automatism. As long as there remains any need of conscious effort in dealing with any impression, any need to remember the process by which the state is reached, or even any need of conscious interference with or cognizance of the purely spontaneous elastic reflex reaction, the aspirant to this summum bonum true wisdom and perfect happiness has not adequately acquired the habit of indifference and mastery.
His wickedness. That's nasty word. I mean, or at the very least, you could demote Jackie to a friend of. And like, well, I don't think she brings anything. Because I would think somebody at her age, she would be able to lead and gather them together, but she can't. Well, see, that's why we just need her for every now and again showing the medical practice, them going to see her for medical things, or them organizing charity things with her, and every now and again her having like a ponderosa with them. But like outside of that, Jackie don't. We need to quietly reduce her screen time. Speaking of Jackie, that show is Basketball Wives coming back?
She just said Ponderosa and Jackie. And that reminded me of the other Jackie. I think that one is also in a holding pattern because of Jackie's daughter going off on her the way that she did that last season with all that physical shit. I think they're on pause or hiatus trying to figure out what to do with that show. I think that's what I last heard, but I think it's tired. They're gonna keep that show going. They need some new blood. It's some younger girls that could be basketball wives at this point. And they just need she needs to just retire. I'm sick of her too. She's so fucking messy.
And I think it's time for Simone to go. Turning in teeth. Kind of tired. Simone gotta go. Simone just, you can tell she just starting arguments with Quad at this point just because she It is the culmination of one of the two most important chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. There is a firm merit in this matter. In the idea of laughter is inherent that of cruelty, as has been shown by many philosophers. And this is doubtless why it has been excluded by the mystic schools of pettymongers from the Dole curricula. The only answer is to shrug the shoulders in humorous contempt. For on this rock and no other hell.
Mastery. The aim of him who would be master is single. Men call it personal ambition. That is, he wants his universe to be as vast, and his control of it as perfect as possible. Few fail to understand this aim, but many fail in the formulation of their campaign to attain it. Some, for instance, fill their purse with fairy gold, which, when they try to use it, is found to be dead leaves. Others attempt to rule the universe of another, not seeing that they cannot even take true cognizance thereof. The proper method of extending one's universe, besides the conventional apparatus of material science, is tripartite: evocation, invocation, and vision. Control is a matter of theoretical and practical acquaintance with magical formulae, but notably also of self-discipline. The ground is to be consolidated, and all contradictions resolved in higher harmonies by the various trances. So much indeed is obvious to superficial consideration. Strange then that so few magicians take the further step of inquiry as to the availability of the instrument. Short-sighted selfishness. Good sooth, to take for granted that oneself is sure to find its proper medium to hand for its next adventure. Here the magical memory is a virtue marvelous to correct perspective. For how often in the past has one's life been all but sheer failure from mere lack of proper means of self-expression? Who among us can be seriously satisfied today knowing what we do with even the most perfect human instrument? It is then no more than simple good sense for the magus to formulate his general political aim in some such terms as these: to secure the greatest possible freedom of self-expression for the greatest possible number of points of view, of which issue the practical aspect may be phrased as follows: to improve the human race in every conceivable way, so as to have available for service the greatest possible variety of the best instruments imaginable. And this is the rational justification of the apparently imbecile and too often sentimental hypocritical aphorism, love all beings serve mankind, that is upon the political plane. For so these two phrases contain one, the magical formula, which is the key like of invocation, and a trance two, the implicit injunction to make clear the way, the magician through the heavens by right ordering of every star. The word serve is indeed misleading and objectionable. It implies a false and despicable attitude. The relation between men should be the brotherly respect which obtains between noble strangers. The idea of service is either true and humiliating or false and arrogant. The most common and fatal pitfall which menaces the man who has begun to extend his universe beyond the world of sense perception is called confusion of the planes. To him who realizes the all one and knows to distinguish between any two things as the basic error. It must seem natural and even right to perform what seem perforce acts of love between incongruous ideas. He has the key of languages. Why then should not he, the Englishman, avail himself of it to speak in Hebrew without learning it? Same problem offers itself daily in myriad subtle shapes. Command these stones to become bread. Throw thyself down from the pinnacle of the temple, as it is written, he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all thy ways. These last four words throw light upon the fog of Coranson. Restriction be unto him in the name of Babylon. For his ways are the ways of nature, who hath appointed between the planes a well-ordered relation. To deform this device is not and cannot be thy way. The act of love, so seeming as a false gesture for love, for such love is not love under will. Be thou well aware, O thou who seekest to attain to mastery of doing aught miraculous. The surest sign of the master is this, that he is a man of like passions with his fellows. He does indeed transcend them all and turn them all to perfections, but he does this without suppression, for everything that lives is holy, or distortion, for every form is a true symbol of substance, or confusion, for admixture is hatred, his union is love. Initiation means the journey inwards. Nothing is changed or can be changed, but all is truly understood with every step. The Magus of the gods, with his one word that seems to overturn the chariot of mankind in ruin, does not in fact destroy or even alter anything. He simply furnishes a new mode of applying existing energy to established forms. The invention of electric machines has in no way interfered with matter or motion. It has only helped us to get rid of certain aspects of the illusion of time and space, and so brought the most intelligent minds to the threshold of the magical and mystical doctrine. They have been forced to imagine the possibility of the perception of the universe as it is, freed of conditions. That is, they have been given a glimpse of the nature of the attainment of mastery. And it is surely but a little step to take for the leaders of natural science, mathematics, the guiding star, that they should understand the compelling necessity of the great work and apply themselves to its achievement. Here the great obstacles are these: firstly, the misunderstanding of self; secondly, the resistance of the rational mind against its own conclusions. Men must cast off these two restrictions. They must begin to realize that self is hidden behind and independent of the mental and material instrument in which they apprehend a point of view. And they must seek an instrument other than that which insists with every single observation on impressing on them what is merely its own most hateful fraud and error, the idea of duality. The Eon of Horus is here, and its first flower may well be this, that freed of the obsession of the doom of the ego and death, and of the limitation of the mind by reason, the best men again set out with eager eyes upon the path of the wise. Mountain track of gold, and then the untrodden ridge that leads the ice gleaming pinnacles of mastery.
First night, so praise God, my girl Dorinda is back because I was looking forward.
Me too.
To her ass turning. Like, she is one of my favorite girls from the old school new one.
Okay.
I really like all of them.
Bluestone Manor, hello.
You know, my girl. Clip it. Clip. I
want to go to Bluestone Manor in New England, okay? In Maine or Delaware or Vermont.
My girl had them in the Berkshires.
We're in the Berkshires. Okay, I'm trying to go. I low-key, and this is problematic, I wanted Ramona to be on the show.
That is not problematic because I agree. Ramona is also one of my
Ramona is a
favorites.
nut house.
Exactly.
It would have been
No. Oh my God. I would have anxiety watching it. She gets on my list.
My girl, thank God. And then her face, like, Ramona. I will never forget watching Ramona curse Bethany Frankel out for her dating choices on their walk of and was not even sorry about it. She was like, well, girl, I don't know what to tell you.
And her iconic "Thank God" meme that goes viral every 5 minutes.
And I love it, okay? Because every time, thank God, and then the look on her face afterwards, like, oops.
I just be thinking about it, and I'm like, there's so many people they could have brought on the show. Like, people out of a Volkswagen Beetle with shoving 10 people in, or shoving 10 people into it.
I can't speak for the gays, but I'm sure Mother can, although he's also not a bottom. But I know the majority of the women I had anal sex with really enjoy anal sex. So, like this idea that you're gonna make a comparison to a clown car is just silly because my lived experiences, a lot of women, if not most women, particularly once you get to their 40s, really like anal sex. And apparently, at least half the gays really like getting fucked in the ass. So, like,
actually, it's more, like 65-35. Like the ratio is in the top state.
mastery. The aim of him who would be master is single. Men call it personal ambition. That is, he wants his universe to be as vast, and his control of it as perfect as possible. Few fail to understand this aim, but many fail in the formulation of their campaign to attain it. Some, for instance, fill their purse with fairy gold, which, when they try to use it, is found to be dead leaves. Others attempt to rule the universe of another, on seeing that they cannot even take true cognizance thereof. The proper method of extending one's universe, besides the conventional apparatus of material science, is tripartite: evocation, invocation, and vision. Control is a matter of theoretical and practical acquaintance with magical formulae, but notably also of self-discipline. Ground is to be consolidated, all contradictions resolved in higher harmonies by the various trances. So much indeed is obvious to superficial consideration. Strange then that so few magicians take the further step of inquiry as to the availability of the instrument. Short-sighted selfishness. Good sooth, to take for granted that oneself is sure to find its proper medium to hand for its next adventure. Here the magical memory is a virtue marvelous to correct perspective. For how often in the past has one's life been all but sheer failure from the mere lack of proper means of self-expression? Who among us can be seriously satisfied today knowing what we do with even the most perfect human instrument? It is then no more than simple good sense for the magus to formulate his general political aim in some such terms as these: to secure the greatest possible freedom of self-expression for the greatest possible number of points of view, of which issue the practical aspect may be phrased as follows: to improve the human race in every conceivable way, so as to have available for service the greatest possible variety of the best instruments imaginable. And this is the rational justification of the apparently imbecile